Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Are you ready? Let's go do this. So Jeanne Collins, oh my God, it's so fun to talk to you. How are you?
I am good. I am good. So for everybody in the audience, we spoke like months ago for the first
Yes.
time on a personal basis, right? To talk about our businesses and writing books and just kind of share stories. And so now we're actually talking on the podcast. So it's fun to see you again.
Yes, yes, it is. After we just spent 20 minutes talking before I hit record, so I'm like, at some point you do have to hit record and you do have to start, the podcast. But what I love talking about you is that you're just fun to talk to and very easy as well. So you have an amazing background, a very interesting background. You left your corporate job and you created a life for yourself around your love for interior design and then helping others cultivate their internal awareness and personal well-being through their external surroundings, which I love. And I can't wait till we get into and talk about a little bit more. So, and I also want to talk about your book, 2 Feet In, and the message that you want to share with the world. So let's just start there and I will let you fill in the rest of the blanks.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so my story's kind of interesting, I'm told. So professionally, I spent 22 years in advertising sales. So I was an advertising sales executive. I ran a sales team. I worked for a public company. So I always say to everybody, I reported to Wall Street because that's what you do when you work for a public company. And in January of 2020, I got fired. And the closer you get to the top, you're always more vulnerable. But there was a part of me that thought they're never going to fire me. I'm the only female
Mm,
VP. And I've been here for a long time and I have a really large team and we're doing pretty well. However, there was a restructure and that's just what happens. That's very common. And there was a restructure and out I went. And that was right before the lockdown. And so it's January 2020. I had been doing that for 11
okay.
years. I was a single parent. I, owned a house in a very expensive town with a gigantic mortgage. And I was also about to turn 50. And I felt like the midlife crisis has like slammed me in my face. Like, who are you going to be? What do you want to do with your life? And I realized that I'd had so much success in corporate America in the 22 years I was there that I never would have imagined I would have had. I could have never have dreamt the amount of success I would have. And so I just thought, if I have to work for 20 more years, let me really think about this. And let me really think about what I could build and what I could do with the next 20 years. And I want to be passionate about what I do and I want to love what I do. And that is not corporate America anymore. And so I decided interior design was my passion and my hobby. And I did it for myself, for my house and family and friends. And I kind of thought, like, if I could play with fabrics and wallpaper all day, I'd be so happy, which is like a smidget. If I spend 3% of my time doing what I thought I would be doing, it would be great. And I don't, because that's not what interior designers really do. But I decided, okay, I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to go back to school to get a certificate in interior design because I know why I like what I like, but I don't have a degree. So I need to go get some degree. I need like formal education in this. And so I did. I signed up for a program at New York Institute of Art and Design. And then 2 months later, signed up for Parsons School of Design and did both programs consecutively at the same time and finished them in 9 months because I doubled down. And then I started my business in May of 2020. And I tell people all the time, I honestly had no right to become an entrepreneur. I had no right to become an interior designer, right? Like, really, it was sort of a joke when you think about it.
Yeah. Well,
However, we all have the right to be whoever we want to be.
I was just going to say,
So
why did you
go
feel like
build
you
it.
did? I like, why
Go
did you
build it.
feel? Yeah, right. Why did you feel like you didn't have the right? I think that's a very interesting wording because I've never heard
Yeah.
it worded like that. When you start the personal
Yeah.
development mindset space, you go into, you can be whatever you want to
Whatever you
be.
want.
Whatever you
Correct.
want. There's no, so I find that very interesting that why would you speak to yourself that way at that time?
Because that was the background I came from. And,
Mm,
and that was sort of the pushback that I was also getting from my friends and from some of my family members. Like, you're going to go do what? And
mhm.
why do you think that you can be successful as an interior designer? That's not what you do. You run a sales team. Like, you're a corporate executive. And so it's such a drastic change that it's hard for the people on the outside of your life to embrace that change. And
Mhm.
so, that was a path inside itself of, me figuring out who I wanted to be and then figuring out how do I communicate that to everyone on the outside and then being okay with the fallout of what happens because you know what? You sometimes lose friends and you lose
I'm
family
sure.
when you do
Yeah.
stuff like that
Yeah.
because
Uh,
they don't support it.
Yeah, how did you navigate that change in your life and the loss of friends and family along the way? Because that's common, that's not
Yeah.
unusual to happen when people go through a transformative change like that.
Yeah, you what I did is, I found my rock, and my dad was my rock. And my dad was like, I'll support you. You'll be fabulous. You'll be great at anything. And would just ask tons of inquisitive questions about what I was doing and would want to see the website and would want to see the content. And my business is named after him. And so his name is Jerry. So my business is Germar. And so he's the Jerry and the Germar, and my stepmother is the Mary. And so I very quickly learned like who my advocates were and who was
Mhm,
in my corner. And those would be the people I would go to. And I would have to painfully say, the people that were maybe part of my everyday life in the past that were there to support me started to fade away. And there was a time where that was really the first 2 years of that was
mhm.
really painful and made me really, really sad until I kind of changed my mindset on it and just said, you know what? People come into your life for a reason and a time and a season. And those people provided so much support for me at the time, but they're not part of my future journey. And that's okay. And
Yeah.
that doesn't diminish our friendship. It just means that that's not their role in my life right now. And it took me a couple of years to figure
Y
that part out too.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, and in your book as well, you do unpack a little bit of those relationships you had and how they came in and came out of your life as you were going through this journey. Where did your book come in all of this? So in May 2020, correct? That's when you started your business?
Right.
Yeah, in the throes of
Yep.
COVID to boot.
Yep.
Like, kudos to
Yep.
you for doing that. Like,
Yep.
even before we'll go there too, because I got a question in that too, but where did your book come in along in your journey in this, and what made you decide to want to put pen to paper what was inside your head?
So I had no intention of writing a book. I always said I was kind of 2 years into my business, and I had always said, it would be really cool. I'm like every designer. We would love to have a coffee table book. Like, how great would it be to have a coffee table book of your projects? Like, sits on someone's coffee table, like there to, cement what you've done as your business forever. But I always felt like I didn't have enough projects, and B, I wanted there to be a message in my book, and the message hadn't come to me yet. I wasn't
Mhm.
sure what I wanted to communicate. What was going to be my point of difference other than just I'm a decent designer and I have some really pretty things and my story's interesting. And so from that, the small steps, big wins here. I had signed up to get emails from a company that focuses on people who want to self-publish and want to become authors. And I had just, I got some random email about some Zoom that was happening about, if you think you want can be a writer, let me show you how, or something like that, right? So I opened the email, I read it, and then I kind of closed it. And then it came again. And I was like, I have the time on my calendar free, the hour and a half that this call is happening. It's free. Maybe I should just go listen to what this guy has to say about writing a book. I don't know anything about writing a book, but let's go listen. And I listened. And at the end of the hour and a half call, you spent the last half an hour mind mapping, which for people who don't know what mind mapping is, it's basically just a big brainstorm dump. And you
Mhm.
start with a concept in the center. It looks like a sun, and you start with a concept in the center, and then arms go off of it of different concepts. By the end of this call, I had an entire outline for a book. And it was a book about my life and the
Mhm.
lessons that I've learned that I can share to others to help inspire them because I've done things that not everybody does. And so after the call was over, I was like, wow, and I looked at the messages on this piece of paper and I thought, if I write this book and one person makes changes to their lives to make their life better, then that will be worth it. And so I made the commitment to write a book and I committed that I was going to write every day from 5 to 6. And I did. And I hired a book coach because I didn't know anything about what I was doing at all. And and that has absolutely changed the trajectory of my life and my passions. Yeah,
Oh,
completely. Like
yeah.
completely has changed my life. Yeah,
Wow.
which has been cool.
It's
Yeah.
it's funny. I wrote my book and we were talking a little bit about that before. Same thing happened to me, by
Yeah.
the way, just to let you know. A series of unrelated events happened within a 4 or 5 day period that all pointed me to, why don't you go self-publish and write a book? I was like, "Where is all this coming from?" And, the first time it hits, it's like you don't pay attention to it, and then the second
Right.
time you're like, "Oh, this is curious," and by the third time, I'm like, "The universe is trying to tell me something, so I guess I better go do
Yeah.
that and see
Uh-huh. I
where
should
it
wake
goes."
up.
Yeah, 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 I should wake up. Somebody's trying to get my attention. Yes, I think it happens that it's funny when we quiet ourselves enough to listen to what is coming our way. There are clues there that God, universe, whatever you wanna call it, sends to us that kinda awakens something in the soul. What did you discover about yourself through the process of writing your book?
Well, anyone who's written a book about anything to do with their lives will say, it's therapy in writing. It really is. And if you, especially if you're writing a book about stories about yourself and you really force yourself to be honest and vulnerable about what happened
Agree.
and your flaws, your faults, how you felt, how you poorly handled things, people you hurt, people that hurt you, and be okay with the fallout of that. And so I think it was a lot of therapy, to be honest. By the time I was done, I had a very different viewpoint of my mother, of my stepmother, of some of the things I wanted in my life and what was important to me. And so part of my wellness mindset journey came from writing my book. Because while I'm writing, I'm reading and I'm reading, and then there's a period where I was going to therapy because all of a sudden I got really depressed because my interior design business wasn't doing well, and I was
Mm,
so embarrassed because it wasn't doing well, and I felt like such a failure, and so all of a sudden I slip into this, like, deep depression, and here I am writing a book, and the book is about me living my best life. That was sort of the purpose of the book, and I'm like, here I am crying when I'm
yeah.
driving down the street uncontrollably for no reason whatsoever. And my therapist was really great, and I didn't write for about 4 months, and she was like, "But here's the lesson." She's like, "You need to put this in your book because this makes you are real, and not every day is sunshine and roses, and
Yeah.
you had a really hard time, but there is a lesson in how you overcame that hard time and the steps that you took to get out of that, and that is valuable for someone else, and you have to be willing to share that part of your journey." And so I did. I added that to my
Wow.
book, and I wasn't
That's
planning on
yeah.
talking about that at all.
Yeah, because
Um,
we don't wanna show those sides of us, you know?
well, right.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
yeah.
don't want to, right. And but what I also learned from that stint where was as soon as I started to talk about and be really honest about what I was feeling and be really honest about, what I'm feeling is failure. I feel like a failure with my business and I shouldn't be. I'm having all the success. I shouldn't feel like a failure. And once I started to tell people what was happening and what I was going through and that the business was losing money and I was so disappointed in myself and I felt like, I'm a salesperson. I am about the numbers. And I just felt like the business was losing money and I was a failure. And as soon as I actually started to talk about that to people, it is amazing. Like the stress of that started to go away because I
Mm.
was being honest and vulnerable, admitting it. And then the universe gave me the gift of a last minute, very large client right before Christmas that year. And all of a sudden, at the end of the year, the business actually made a bunch of money
Wow.
because the
Wow,
universe gave me the gift of the most incredible woman as a client. And so it
wow.
was like,
Isn't that
so that
awesome?
process, I talk about that process, because there are lessons in that and lessons as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur and just lessons as a person struggling. Like, depression's real and it's okay to admit that you have it. And how are you
Mm.
going to deal with it?
Yeah, true, true. What was some of the
Mm.
self-talk you told yourself to get yourself out of the failure? Because we can get stuck in that failure loop, like, "Man, you just failed again," like,
Yeah.
you suck," you know?
Oh my
What
goodness.
the
I have like journals full of this one.
Yeah.
So I really focus, I like went back to the basics. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, let's go back to the basics of mindset, right? And laws of attraction and the universe. And I was like, let's go back to the basics and journal every day. I journal every day anyway. And it's always, I always have my I am statements and my intentions for the day and things I'm grateful for. So I do all of the basics. But I was like, let's go back to the basics and every single day free form write about all the times the universe has provided and all the times
Mm,
that it's worked out okay. And because that's what's in my book is all these stories of challenges and
right.
how I overcame them. And
Mhm.
so I was able to start to see on the pages when I went back and would start to read them, I could see on the pages like, okay, it worked out okay. Like I'm going to be okay.
Yeah,
Like
you're gonna be
I'm
okay.
going to be okay.
Yeah.
Trust, go back to the basics, go back to the mindset, go back to stop the chatter, huge fan of Mel Robbins, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, just stop your mind for a moment and go back to the basics and get back in touch with who you are, what your mission is, why you're doing it. You're doing it for a good grounded reason, and trust that the universe has your back.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. In your book, you advocate for committing fully to life choices and embracing vulnerability, which we just talked about. I mean, that was just evident in there. How did you come to develop the like 2 feet in philosophy and talk about the name of the book and where that came from? And any of your
Mhm.
experiences, anything else that you want to put around that? But it's a very curious and interesting title. So, how did you come to that?
It is. Thank you. So that wasn't the title of my book. So people will tell you if you hire a coach about your book, they say, don't worry about the title will come. And I'm like, no, 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 I got it. I got the title. Right. I already have the title. And every professional coach will tell you, no, you don't write the book first and then the title comes second. I'm like, no, no, I got the title. I got it. I got it. So I actually, the first version of my book, I sent it to a friend of mine who's also a writer, and I sent him the book, and it was the most scary day related to the book because I felt like I was like giving my baby to someone for them
Yeah.
to critique
I
and
remember that
criticize
day.
and my life, right? Like, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
what am I doing?
Yeah, it's out
And
there
so
now.
I it's out there now. And so I gave it to him, and his response was very helpful. And his response, just so people know, his response was, "Do you really want my honest feedback?" I was like, "Yes, I do. We can't grow without honest feedback." And
Yeah,
he goes,
that's the scariest sentence ever.
that's the
You won't
scary sentence, right? You want my honest feedback? And he
Yeah, I think
goes,
so.
yeah. And he goes, your book is really good. He goes, but you need to rewrite it. And I was like, okay. I
Wow.
was like, okay. There was a positive sentence in there, and I heard it first. And he goes, and you need to change the title. And I was like, okay. And actually, he's the one who came up with the title because
Hmm.
we were talking. He was like, talk me through, like, what do you think are the main talking points? And so I said them to him, and he said, you live your life 2 feet in. And that is
Mm.
how you approach things. And not everybody does that. And he goes, you make a decision, you jump in with 2 feet, and you are all
And
in all the time. And
oh,
you
cool,
never look
awesome.
back and you don't second guess yourself. And I was like, that's a really cool name for a book. And I
Yeah,
Googled it, and there's a children's book called 2 Feet In. And I was like, that
yeah.
title's taken. But then in the book world,
It
that's
doesn't
not how it
matter,
works.
yeah, that's
So
right, yeah, it doesn't work
doesn't
that way.
matter. So I
Isn't
went
that
back to
well
it because it really stuck with me. Cause I was
yeah.
like,
What was the original
that
title?
is true. One with the universe.
Oh, okay, no, I like 2 feet in.
Yeah, 2 feet, I know, I
Good
know, I
change,
know,
good
and
change.
at first I was like, "Oh, that's a great title," but then I was like, "Oh, it's taken, I'll have to come up with something else," and then I just, like, it really stuck with me, and it
Mm,
really resonated with me
mhm,
because I was like, "That is it," because so often we're half in, half out, or we're at a crossroad and we don't know which way to go, and we're sort of like, don't know, and
yeah,
really what
that's a
prevents
good
people
point.
from moving forward is fear and doubt and the negative chatter. And so if you can figure out how to quiet your mind and stop that, then it makes it much easier to jump 2 feet in with a choice or a decision and just plow forward. And
Yeah,
that is what I've done my entire life and not even realized it until I wrote the book. And then there was like the continuing theme throughout the book after I
yeah,
wrote it. And that
yeah.
theme is very much there.
Oh, that's cool. My book, it's
Yeah.
funny that we should talk about title because my book, I didn't start writing it, but I was like, it's going to be called Small Steps, Big Wins right after the podcast.
Yeah.
And then I started
Sure.
writing it. And then I wound up getting like, I'm like, well, no, maybe I'll change it to Between the Fire and Flame. And my editor liked that one. And then I changed it to something else. I can't remember what it was. And she's like, oh, I like that one too. And it's funny. I talked to my publisher this week and they were like, what's the title of your book? I'm like, well, I think it's going to be Small Steps, Big Wins. He goes, I love it. So he's like,
See,
"I
I
love
mean,
it." Like, "Okay,
yeah. And
yeah,
then it's like,
let's do
okay,
this
then
full
there we
circle
go. Then
background."
there you
Yeah,
go.
and the couple
Right.
people that read it, they're like, "Yeah, I like that," It's like, "Okay,
Yeah.
all right, well,
And then it
we'll."
resonates, and
And
then
then
it
it
takes on a
resonates,
life
yeah.
of its own.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
so
does. It does. And books do that too. And so let's go back to I'm fascinated by this concept of internal and external worlds and how you use interior design and helping people, cultivate their internal worlds, their internal self by using the external around them. So talk a little bit about what you do because I find that fascinating. I'd love to dive into that and see what your thoughts are.
It's actually really cool, and it kinda happened by accident because it's a merger of 2 of my passions, and so, I'm very passionate about inner wellness and mindset and also physical wellness too, what I eat, how I treat my body, what I eat, how I sleep, what my environment is like, and I love interior design, and so it all just started melding together to become wellness-led interior design, and I don't know this, there's so many interior designers around here, but I, work with a lot of professionals in the industry, and they're like, not everybody looks at it the way you look at it. Like the way
Mhm.
you look at it is actually unique because everyone's unique and you are unique. And so for me, it's things like I will say to people, I'll say to clients, and I say this when I speak at events and stuff, what's the first thing that you see when you wake up in the morning? And I'll pause and people will think about that. And I'll say, are you looking at a beautiful piece of artwork that inspires you, has meaning, touches your heart? What's on the ceiling? Is it painted a color? I have wallpaper on my ceiling, geometric, black and white wallpaper. It's wild. It's crazy, but I love it. My mind gets lost in it when I wake up in the morning.
Oh,
I
wow.
say, or are you looking at a pile of laundry? And when I say that to a group, 95% of the people start to laugh because, most of us are actually looking at laundry in one capacity. And I say, when I design spaces, that's part of what I do is really giving thought to your senses. And this is like the wake up call to your body when you first wake up. And this is what you're telling your body is important and how you want to nourish your body when you first wake up is the first thing that you see. And that is actually really important. And so, for me, I have a piece of artwork that is a photograph of something that's very meaningful to me. And on another wall, I have a piece of artwork that was my grandmother's, and it is incredibly meaningful and impactful to me. And so it means a lot. And when I get out of bed, I have a very plush white carpet that no one is allowed to walk on. And it's white because that's the first experience my feet feel. And that's what I'm telling my body because my feet are supporting my body all day long. Like that's the first experience I'm giving to my body is what my feet feel when they step out of bed. And most people don't give that any thought at all.
Yeah. Wow.
But it is so important when you start to think that way. And then I take it to all different things like, how you enter your home. Most people now enter their homes through a mudroom attached to a garage. And what does it look like? Is it chaos? Are there sports gear everywhere and clothes everywhere and backpacks and stuff? That is what you're telling your body is the welcome home. That's the
Mm.
energy you're creating for yourself and your body as the welcome home is the chaos. And so think about that. And you might not be consciously aware of that chaos based on how it is, because that's just your life, but that has an impact on your body and your inner wellness. And if we could remove some of that chaos and put everything behind closed doors and we put fun wallpaper on the ceiling or we put a bench with a really cool pattern bench cushion that you really like, or we put really fun tile on the floor and it kind of like excites you when you get home because you know what, you've always wanted black and white tile on the floor somewhere and it doesn't go in your house, but hey, you can put it in a mudroom. You do
Yeah.
anything in a mudroom. You can
All
paint your
right. That's
cabinets
true.
green, orange, yellow, doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
right.
It's a mudroom. It's fun. But think about the energy that you're creating when you first enter your home and how that impacts you. And so I approach design with that approach and I challenge my
Wow.
clients to think about these things and that attracts a different type of client because not
Yeah.
everybody is interested in
Right.
their energy.
Hmm.
Not everybody's
Interesting.
interested in their energy.
All right, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a minute. So what if somebody walks into that mudroom, they got kids, it's chaos because it's the mudroom and there's jackets hanging and there's stuff, and they're like, "Well, but I'm okay with that. Like, that's just my thing to walk into that." But if I hear what you're saying, all that clutter subconsciously causes chaos in our mind. So
Correct.
how do you
It
work
does.
around that, or what would your advice be to somebody who feels like, "Well, I don't really think I need to I hear you, but I don't think I need to change that, and, I can't get my kids to clean this crap up anyway." So,
Right.
what would you say
Yeah.
to somebody like me?
I would show you lots of different pictures of mudrooms that don't look like yours and say, take a look at these. How do you feel when you see these?
Mm,
And then most of the time people will be like, oh, wow, that's really pretty. Oh, that's nice. Oh, I like that. Oh, that's interesting. Wow. There's a design on that door. That's really cool. And I say to people, like, if money were no object, like, don't think about it from a financial perspective. If money
yeah,
were no object and we were just going to design something for your wellness, do any of these resonate with you? And then people will come back and they'll be like, that is pretty. That
yeah,
is cool. I like how that makes me feel because images make people feel a certain way
true,
and they get
true,
attracted to certain feelings. And then it's like,
true.
okay, that's what I want to replicate for you when you walk in your house. And
Oh,
don't just say, I'm accustomed to the chaos and therefore it's okay. It doesn't have to be that way.
yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on minimalists or minimalism? being a minimalist? Because I know
Yeah.
those guys are out there. I followed them for a little while. I'm not knocking them or anything. I just know that they're out there. I thought it was so cool because when I watched them for the first time, I think I threw out like half of my house because
So
there was just something
I get
freeing.
it is very freeing. So
Yeah.
I get a dumpster every year. Every spring I get a dumpster. And I find if I have a dumpster in my house, it encourages me to purge and go through things and go through closets and donate and give away and go through your clothes and like really clean out. Even if I don't think I need it, it's amazing. I manage to fill it every time. So I like minimalism a lot as long as it isn't cold. So a space still has to be warm. Like, I don't want it to be so stark that it doesn't have any warmth and doesn't have
But
personality to it, but I
but
am a big fan of, like, high you don't wanna see I don't wanna see the clutter, I don't wanna see the mess. Less is
what
more, for
What
sure.
would be an example then of like a warm environment, a warm minimal environment versus a sterile cold environment? Because to me, a minimalist, I just think of the least amount of things, but it's not
Right,
just about the
yeah.
things, right? So what would the things
No, it
look
needs to
like?
have it needs yeah, so it needs to have texture, and so a room still needs to have movement, and it still needs to have energy, and it needs to have a way for the energy to flow, not just about having open space and minimal amount of furniture, because if it's just bland pieces of furniture and a whole room can be neutral, it can all be white. I love designing in neutrals, but what you have to do is you have to have a variation of textures and materials within that. So you need to have things like a really interesting rug on the floor that will soften the space and invite people
Okay.
in. Things like pillows of different textures, different patterns, different materials within the texture. So, having a material that has some silk woven into it will add a completely different vibe to it, or a boucle that's really nubby and soft. And so, having soft throws, taking a cream cashmere soft throw and throwing it over a sofa, it invites you to come and sit down and bring a
Mm.
book.
Yeah, right.
Artwork is another thing. Artwork is another thing. Don't forget about the walls and don't forget about the ceiling. And so, putting some really interesting artwork, the bigger the better, especially when you're doing minimalism. You don't have a lot of furniture, so you can go big with your artwork and you can go bold with your artwork, which makes it really fun and interesting. So it has depth and texture. And then the other thing you need to do is you need to have multiple materials. So within every space, if you think about a feng shui way, but you want to have, metals and woods and fabrics and ideally water, fresh plants. Like every room should have something green. You should be bringing nature in, even in the most minimal of a space. So even if it's a faux plant, get a big faux plant, put it in the corner.
Oh, wow.
And that will
Okay.
make the space inviting without being like full of stuff.
Yeah. So I heard you say a mixture of textures, and you are now challenging me, who is old school, who just sticks with wait a minute, the coffee table has to match the end table, and they all have to flow into one another. And the lamps, both of the lamps have to be the same. Like this is old school, right? Like this is what I grew up
Right.
in. So
Yeah.
as I'm
No, you
seeing
don't
here
want
going,
it. You don't
and
want it
all
to
the
match.
pillows have to match and everything has to look the same. So I'm kind of thinking IKEA now at the moment and just kind of going into that and how there's all different
Yeah.
but
You want
even
to shake
IKEA
it
to a
up a little
point
bit.
yeah, even IKEA to a point though, they can design rooms that are all the same. Like they have the same flow to it versus mixed materials. So if I hear you correctly, you're giving us permission to mix our materials and
100%. You can
mix it
mix
all.
materials, you can mix metals.
Is it
I tell people when it comes to woods, you only want 2 wood colors per room,
I
because
was
then it
just
starts
ready
to
to
get
say, what are
messy.
some
Starts
do's
to
or
get messy.
don'ts on that? Yeah, what are
2,
some do's or
only
don'ts on
2.
that? Only 2.
Only
What does
2
that
only
mean
2
for
wood
woods?
colors per
Yeah,
wood.
what
So
does
it's
that
like
mean?
if you have wood floor, let's say your wood floor is dark and you wanna get a coffee table that's wood and make that coffee table light. So it's a not the
Contrast.
same color because you don't want it all to look the same, right? But then that's it. Like no more colors. You're not adding like another wood that has a mahogany that has some red in it or, a wood that has some yellow or orange. Like that's it. And then you also have to remember, okay, we want multiple materials. So, all right, where are we putting metals? Like, how are we getting a metal in here? And maybe it's a side table that has metal legs, or maybe it's a reading lamp that is metal that gets you some metal that's mixed into that so that not everything is the same material. So, you don't want every piece of furniture to be made of wood. You need some fabrics to soften the
Right.
space.
Right, right. How would somebody who's listening decide what they would choose that would be good for them, that would create a space that would foster interior wellness for them? Where would they start?
I tell people go
Yeah.
out to Pinterest and create some Pinterest boards of things that resonate with you, and you will start to see a pattern. It doesn't, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see a pattern, to be like, "Oh, wow, you keep pulling these things, like light blue is like kind of in here a lot. I think you actually like blue, even though you say you don't like color. Like there's light blue here everywhere. So maybe we get some pillows." You find ways that are low commitment. So low commitment things are things like painting your walls a color. Very inexpensive, low commitment. You can paint one wall, a focal wall, one color, the rest of the room another color. You can paint your ceiling a color. Low commitment, not a lot going on there. Pillows, accessories on a bookshelf where you can start to add color and play with things and see if you like it. Inexpensive artwork that might be a little bit outside your comfort zone and might have some colors or some textures or some movement that you're not used to. It's an inexpensive commitment to do some of these things. And there's so many resources online now where you can find things and you can buy them inexpensively and put them up and be like, how do I feel about that?
Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
I
Oh,
like that.
yeah. You
Yeah.
mentioned before about movement in a room, and I thought that was a curious comment because I never heard about that before, but designing a room for movement. Can you explain what that means? What that looks like?
Yeah, so you always want to think about your traffic flow within a room and how do people move from thing to thing, and what do your seating areas look like. And so, whenever you're doing a walkway, the rule of thumb is you want a walkway to be at least 3 feet. So as you're walking in your general spaces, you want it to be 3 feet or 4 feet or more if it's a kitchen.
Mm.
But when you're talking about within furniture, you can go down as low as 18 inches if you're talking about a seating area that has a table and a chair and a coffee table. In that sense, you want those spaces to be closer. So 18 inches so that everyone can reach the coffee table is a much better flow for creating conversation and for creating, but you want to make sure there is enough flow. Like you don't want to have a chair that has a side table and a side table, and the only way around that chair is through the front or
Mm.
through the back. Like you want to be able to walk all the way around the chair
Oh, interesting.
easily, because that gives the energy a place to flow and that gives people a place to flow. And so you have to think about, don't block doorways and, think about the natural flow and progression within a room, because that also helps the energy flow within the room as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you
Mhm.
share, do you have some stories where you have helped a client, gone in and you've changed the dynamic of their environment and what the result was for them?
One of my favorite stories is actually from the husband of one of my clients, and so it was one of the projects on early on, and they live in a very large house in Connecticut in the town that I live in, and they had this out of character from the front of their house. Front of their house is very center hall colonial, but you walk into the back, and the people who'd owned the house before had built this addition, and they built this huge double-story family room with huge high ceilings and all these wood beams and a loft bar, and it was a really cool space, but all of the wood was yellow. So the floors were yellow, all the wood around the windows were
Oh,
yellow,
wow.
the beams were all yellow, everything was yellow. And so the family had in there, they had 3 kids and 2 dogs, and they had the most enormous brown sectional in this room. And so they had a brown sectional, a black piano, and a huge television and a big, huge fireplace. And they brought me in to update this room. And so we redid the floors and we made the floors a gray wash that had to, it wasn't the same as the kitchen, but we made it a gray wash in a stain. It was a custom stain that we created that matched the kitchen a little bit because this room opened up to the kitchen. So we painted the floors. We painted all of the wood, all of the trim, everything got painted white or black. All of the big beams got painted white. All of the window trim got painted black. We added additional windows because it overlooked a beautiful backyard, but there actually weren't
Mm.
windows there. There are windows everywhere else and huge French doors. So everything got painted. So the room became black and white. And then we decided we were going with an all neutral color palette, even though they have kids. And so we did huge all white sofas, huge. We did an all white rug, an enormous rug, covers the whole space. It's beautiful. We did a white custom ottoman, but all the fabrics are performance and they're all Krypton. Or I literally took a video of me pouring red wine on the fabric of
Mm.
the sofas and showed how it would come off with water. And so
Yeah.
because they had little
The
kids. And
kids, yeah.
so the whole room took on this very zen feel. So the whole room became very light colors with the wood, the fireplace of this beautiful stone with all these really natural warm colors to the stone. It was gorgeous. And the husband at the end, the day that I was there shooting it with a photographer, the husband came up to me and he said, I never knew how stressed that yellow and brown made me feel. And
Wow.
now I realize when I walk into this room, I can feel the stress of the day come out of me as I walk into this room. And you really have created a Zen house that I never thought was even possible. And I have 3 kids and 2 dogs, and it's chaos here. And he's like, I never knew how the yellow and the brown made me stressed. And I
Wow.
was like, there you go. Because you don't necessarily realize that colors actually have a really big impact on us. And changing things like the colors of the floors or the color of the walls or the color
Yeah,
of the trim can really change how people feel in a space. And
yeah.
that's the joy of what I do is creating the energy and the feel. And so anytime anyone walks into this room, everyone says this is such a zen space because there's so much natural light and the outside is beautiful and all the colors. Everything is white and a really soft gray, but it all has a lot of texture, a lot of movement, and it's beautiful, but it's very zen. Lots of fresh plants, huge trees, and it's
Oh,
beautiful,
wow.
but yet it can also accommodate, a 5-year-old who's, like, running on the couch.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
becoming relaxed listening to you explain
Oh,
the
it's
space.
such a oh, it's like a
'Cause
heavenly space. It
I
really
was
is.
gonna
It's
ask,
lovely.
like, the color of the yellow, was it like that bright, crazy yellow? Remember, like, the '70s yellow, or was it
It's the
like that
'70s
that
yellow on the
yeah, was
floor.
that
Yeah, and it
loud
was all
yelly
around, and it was
oh,
all the
yeah.
windows were that color. All the windows were that color. The walls were beige, and so it was just really dark. It was like a dark, dreary, and she had black window treatments, and so it was just a really dark, dreary space that didn't need to be dark and dreary because it
Mm,
was
mhm.
huge. It was like
Yeah,
a huge double story. It was beautiful with this
yeah,
huge all these beams on the ceiling and
yeah.
all of this light. Once we let the light in and adding extra windows, it just like changed the whole dynamic of the
Yeah,
room
yeah,
when
well,
we were
even
able
just
to add more
painting
windows,
yeah, I mean, even just painting walls from
painting
very
everything
dark
white
color to white just brightens it up right there. I mean, that's just
changes everything.
amazing.
Like
For
changes
those
everything.
yeah, for those listening, what are some colors and I know we're kinda going a little off on a side tangent here, but what are some colors that, aren't really good for a space that you would be that you kinda would wanna stay away from? Are there such colors? And what ones
There
would
are.
be better? Yeah,
There are, and it depends on the space and how you're using it. So red, for example, red can be a very angry color.
I've
So
heard that.
I wouldn't put red in a dining room. But there are shades of maroon or cranberry that in a powder room with the
Mm,
right, wallpaper and right lighting and the right vanity is really fun.
okay.
Plum is a great color. Plum is so much fun. But red, I wouldn't put that on a wall, but like orange, for example, orange is a complementary color to blue. And so orange and blue go together really nicely when you do pillows and accents in orange and blue. It's really fun. And
Yeah,
that's a great way to add
I
color.
love blue. It's all over
Yellow,
the
yeah,
place.
like yellow. Yeah, I love blue. Yellow is another one. I love yellow. I have yellow in my sunroom, and in that room, it's really appropriate. I had it in a bedroom in my house when I bought my home, and I really didn't like it in the bedroom, and
Mm,
it bothered me, and so I made it a really soft pale gray instead, and now the room has a much different energy and vibe. But the yellow in the sunroom is fantastic. It's great.
yeah,
Like I
yeah.
love it. It's perfect for the
Oh
sunroom.
my gosh. In your book, as I was reading, you mentioned feeling a newfound sense of calm and purpose at 52, and you're embracing your role as a designer, and you designed your life really to now be what you want it to be. Can you share like a pivotal moment or realization that led you to this profound shift in your mindset and how you approach your living and living space now?
Oh boy. So, there's so many. There's so many. I think the first time that I finished a project for someone, the first project that I had that was a full room project, and I finished the project, and that project in particular was one of the first projects I had, and it was a full living room that I designed for someone, and I designed it and I presented it to the husband and wife, and I'd never actually been there because it was during COVID, and so I'd never been there in person. And so we're in their living room sitting on this rug, which was the only thing that I was given. Like I had to design the whole room around a rug. And, we all have masks on, we're all distanced, and I've got fabrics and presentations and all of this stuff. And I get to the end of my presentation and I look at the husband and I said, "What do you think?" And his task was he wanted to walk into the room and have it be done. He wanted artwork, window treatments, accessories on the table, coffee table books. He wanted the whole room done,
Wow.
and he started with nothing other than a rug. And I said, "Okay." And so we got done with the presentation. He said, "There's only one thing I don't like." And I said, "What is it?" He goes, "I don't like that candle." And I was like, "Okay, I'll find another candle." And he loved everything else. And it was this
Wow.
aha moment for me. I almost burst into tears. It was the aha moment, similar to the moment you and I talked about before we got on this call, where I was like, I can do this. I actually am good at this. Like, this is my calling. This is it. I can do this. And I am like not just running a business and being successful, but I am changing people's lives and I'm impacting how they live and how they live within their homes and how they feel about their homes, because this was a room that nobody liked because it had nothing in it. And now it's like, and it's on the way to his office, and it's first thing you see when you walk in the front door. And now it is like they are so proud of it and they love it. And it changed the whole energy of their home from when you walked in the front door.
How did that make you feel on the inside? Like, what did that do for you once you
Oh,
hit
it
that
was like,
point?
yeah. Yeah, it was like the self-confidence I needed to be like, "Okay, I can do this," you know? Yeah, I made this massive career shift and, I wasn't an interior designer, but you know what? I am. Like, I actually am creative. I actually can do this. And so they gave me the self-confidence to be able to, raise my prices and really be like, I can take this business seriously and people should take this business seriously because I need to take this seriously and they will then
Oh,
take me seriously as a result because I
yeah.
can do this.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, and you did make a massive career shift too. What was one thing that you thought would be hard about making that career shift from corporate to what you do now, but turned out it wasn't hard? And then flip it. What did you think was easy and then wound up being more challenging for you?
So I think the thing that I thought would be really hard was not knowing all these, like not knowing how to run a business. Like I don't understand bookkeeping, I don't understand accounting, I don't even understand how to run an interior design business, which is a very unique industry. And so I thought that would be really hard. And it turns out that if you're willing to ask questions and ask for help, it doesn't have to be hard because there are so many people out there who want to help you understand that. And if you put out into the universe that you need help understanding something, it's amazing what it'll get back to you. And so I found people that, joined my network of friends, and I found a business coach who, really helped me understand how to effectively run a business in this industry. And so I thought that would be the hardest part. And it actually really wasn't because I put it out there and the resources came to help me understand
Yeah.
those things. And talk about small steps, like it literally, like you can't look at like this whole thing of like, oh my goodness, I'm starting a business, there's so many things I have to know. It's just one little thing at a time, like one little thing at a time. Like you just baby step it, and you just like check off the list, like, okay, do I want to be an LLC or do I want to be an S corp or do I want to be C corp, or what's the difference? What bookkeeping platform do I need? Like you just like check through the list one at a time instead of thinking about the whole thing in its totality, and because that can be very overwhelming. But if you break it down and then find people to help you within each one of those, you can get things done. The thing that I thought would be easy and ended up being really hard was I thought it would be easy to keep my friends that I had before, and it was not. It was not easy. When you make major changes like that and you start to change not only what you do but who you are, not everybody's on board with that narrative,
Yeah. How
and
did you
and
navigate that?
that hard.
Yeah. How'd you
That, yeah,
navigate
that
that
was
friend
tough.
change? Ho
Yeah, that was tough. But I think one of the things that I was fortunate with is that I started to meet a new network of friends, and I started to meet people that not only were designers, but believed in mindset, believed in manifestation, believed in the laws of the universe, believed in reaching out for help, and were also entrepreneurs. So they were people who were in the same space as me, not just from a business perspective, but from a mindset perspective. And so I could go to them and talk to them about the things I was struggling with. And all of a sudden I had this like support network that I didn't even know could exist. And so
Yeah.
like the universe brought me new people. I just had to pay attention and kind of like reach out a little bit. And then once you like throw that like a little bit of a hook out there, like, hey, and so much, I mean, and one of them doesn't even live near me, so
Mhm.
everything we do is all FaceTime over the phone. But
Yeah.
like she is truly like my go-to person when I'm having a tough day. Like she's my go-to for
Oh,
sure.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you find that those friends that you thought would hang out or hang on and didn't, once they dropped off, it sounds like it made room for the friends that did matter. So the loss isn't as great, I guess, when
Yeah.
those people
It's
drop off.
not
You don't
because it just,
realize it.
yeah, you
Yeah.
don't realize it. And you also, and yeah, in some senses, do I miss those people? I do, but I think but I can see it as they can't provide the support that I need for myself now in
Mhm,
who I am now and the life I'm living now and the
mhm.
priorities that I have now and my value and my mission. That's not aligned with who they are. And that's okay. Because
Yeah.
then I'm opening myself up for bringing in people that are aligned with that. And then when you do that, that fuels, and then you get so excited and so passionate, like, oh my goodness, look what we could do. We could change the world.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
is great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right?
Once
Like we
you're
can
okay.
manifest anything.
Yeah, right.
And that's
And
amazing.
that's right. You manifest a job.
It's great. You manifest
It doesn't
exactly like
manifest a
manifest
job,
anything. It's
manifest
great.
a book, and so, yeah, what's something that very few people agree with you on?
So I would say that people that have been in my life for a long time, right? Not all of them believe in this concept that you can manifest anything. They really
Wow.
don't. And sometimes, and I've just learned that there are people that are dear, dear friends or dear, dear family members that I love and have been there for me at some of the darkest days. But yet they really kind of look at me like I am speaking another language and I am just insane. And I'm like, you can manifest anything. It's all about mindset. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And, so it's like, I think it's things like that that you just have to recognize that not everybody is aligned with this concept of the power of the universe. Not everybody believes in, and it doesn't even have to be God. Just there are a lot of people just don't believe that there's anything higher,
Mhm,
period.
mhm.
And so when you start to talk about things like that, the power of the moon, it's like people look at you
Yeah.
like, are you crazy? I'm like,
What's an
no, like,
example of yeah, what's an example where you manifested something and, you know, it happened? Probably
oh, I
lots.
manifest. Yeah, no, I do, but I'll use a really simple one.
Okay.
I was reading a book called Positively Wealthy, and it is 33 days of working on manifesting, right? And working on just creating good habits because a lot of people don't have good habits of gratitude and journaling and taking a pause and meditating, things like that. And each day you focus on something different. And one day the exercise was to write about something that you wanted to manifest and let the universe provide it for you and put out your ask and then walk away. And so my ask, and I wrote it down in a book, my ask that day was I really wanted my boyfriend to buy me flowers because he doesn't give me flowers unless there's a reason. And I said, I really want him to bring me flowers. And, and it says like, the exercise was write it down and then let it go, right? It has happened. You put your request in, it's done. And the end of the day came and I, took a pause and sort of like, oh, so much for that. Didn't happen. The next day I had flowers delivered to my house from my boyfriend that he had ordered.
Oh, wow.
And I literally burst into tears and I like showed him. I was like, "You don't understand." Like I literally showed it written
Yeah,
down on this on
yeah,
in this book. I was like, "This is what I asked for yesterday as my sign from the universe that I'm on the right path."
yeah,
And that what I'm doing from a bigger picture perspective, it's like I just needed a sign. And that everything I'm working for from a bigger picture perspective, my brand and my passion and my mission is right. And that was the sign I asked for from the universe
mm,
to show me that this is working. And I was like, and here you ordered flowers and had them delivered to the house, like for no reason.
yeah. What does that
So,
do for your soul when something like that happens?
when something like that happens, it's, oh, I'm on the right path, and I ask the universe all the time for different signs. And then when I get them, I'm like, okay, thank you. Like,
Look for the next
thank
one.
you.
I'm gonna do that for the
Okay,
next one.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay,
yeah,
thank you. Like, and I'll do that a lot. I'll do that a lot just, because some of the stuff I'm working on is like new territory, I'm building a brand
yeah,
and some of this stuff is new and different and is stretching my emotional bandwidth and my vision, but it also is stretching the vision of others because I'm trying to create something that doesn't necessarily exist. And so
yeah.
sometimes I'm like, okay, universe, like I kind of need a sign. So today, like if I could get like an angel number of, a one, like a couple ones, that would really help me know that, you're, and every
Yeah,
day, like it is amazing how it just
that's
happens. And
incredible.
I'm not like I'm thinking about it. It'll just be, I'll look down at my phone and I'll be like, there they are. There
Yeah,
they are. They're the
yeah,
ones, with a
yeah.
picture of my daughter behind it. I'm like, there it is right there.
There it
I'm like,
is.
okay, good. Thank you.
Nice,
Thank you. And,
nice,
just be
nice.
grateful and move on.
I in all my podcasts, I love to ask the same 3 questions, and I wanna pull one of them out now because I feel like this is a good point for it. What's one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered that question or expanded on that topic? And I know it might open up Pandora's box, which is why I asked it.
It's a good question. I love that question.
Thank you.
Um, So I think something that I do talk about that I like to talk about is, I wrote the book and the beginning of the book says like I'm 52 and I'm living my best life and I am the happiest I've ever been. But part of that I've realized, and now I'm 53 going on 54, part of what I've realized as part of that journey is that I always felt like we're looking for happiness and I feel like that's the wrong goal. And and I do write about this in the beginning of the book too, that we're looking for happiness and that's the wrong goal. And what I have that I think is contagious and is a gift I can give to others is I have inner peace. And having inner peace is so much more valuable. And the energy of someone who has inner peace is so different from just the energy of someone who's happy. And so I have managed to find an incredible inner peace with who I am as a person, where I am with life, where I'm going, my passions, my missions. And that is like this guiding force that is honestly like an energy that radiates out from the heart. And that is so different from happiness. And that I say to people, if there's one gift I could give them, is to see that, to feel that from me, and to hope that they can try to find that same thing, because that life is ebbs and flows, ups and downs. I mean,
Yeah.
like, life happens. You can't stop life happening. But if you can find a sense of inner peace and really be good within you, it is amazing the things that you can do and what you
Mm.
can create and the power that you have.
How would you explain to somebody the difference between happiness and inner peace?
Oh, because inner peace is a calm. Inner peace is an acceptance of yourself, where happiness, are you gonna be happy the day your dog dies? No. You're not gonna be happy.
Mm,
But if you have inner peace, then you can reflect inward and think of the gift that you were given because, you had this animal and all of the amazing love that that
mm,
animal gave you and what it taught you, and taught you about, taking care of another living thing and everything else, right? Because happiness is gonna ebb and flow, but inner peace is a calm that you have with how life, and it's really an acceptance of who you are and a desire to want to be the best version of you, comes from a
mm.
sense of inner peace and not feeling done. Like, you're not done. I'm constantly reading books and doing, I mean, people are like, "Oh my goodness, could you stop?" Because I think I make people a little crazy because my bar is so high. I'm constantly learning things, signing up for new classes. Like,
That's okay, that's
you know,
curiosity. That's a
it is.
natural like, we all have
It's a
these
great
virtues
thing.
that
Yeah.
are embedded within us, and curiosity actually, mine's the same. Curiosity, love of learning, like, I can't get enough.
Yeah.
Teach me something, I
Me
don't care.
too.
I'll
Me
always,
too.
continue to learn something. Those are my 2 big ones, and maybe that's a good quality
Yeah.
when it comes to
It's a
podcasters, and
great
you get to
quality.
ask, lots of questions as well, and you
Absolutely.
just kinda just curious and keep digging and keep digging. I love the fact that I'm glad I asked you the question, the difference between happiness and that inner peace, because I think sometimes we think happiness is the ultimate goal. We've been sold a lie that you have to be happy in everything. And if you're not happy, and the opposite is sometimes depression, and that you shouldn't be depressed. And, happiness, like you said, ebbs and flows. It's a feeling that it comes and goes. But when you have that inner peace that's within you that just sits there, then you can be okay with grief. You can be okay with
Right.
sad things that happen, but you still have that inner peace. And, emotions are there for a reason. We do have to work through them. And I think a lot of problem comes in where the denial happens of the hard feelings that we have. And people just don't want to
Right.
process though and say, oh, I should be happy all the time. Well, no, I love that. I love it. I love the picture of inner peace, just having that instead of happiness. What's
Yeah.
one book other than your book? What's one book or resource that's had a significant impact on you?
Comeback Careers. Have to say, Comeback Careers was a book that I read after I got fired, and I give it to people all the time. And it's a great book about anyone who wants to change careers, come back into the workforce that's been out of the workforce. It's designed for women, 30s, 40s, 50s. And it's filled with stories of how people have reinvented themselves, quite
Mhm,
honestly, and along with lots of different exercises. And for me, it made me really think about me and who I was and what were my strengths, and then be able to translate that to even get to the point of saying, wow, I might be actually a creative person. I might actually be able to be, I never consider myself a creative person. I would, if someone said you were
yeah,
creative, I would say no, not at all. And the reality is I am beyond creative. I,
mhm,
keep coming up with all these business ideas. So for me, it was such a pivotal book because it gave me hope from people's stories, which is something I hope my book does for others also. It gave me hope and inspired me, and it gave me a roadmap of things to do. So my
yeah.
book is written with those similar goals in mind, of inspiring people, giving them hope, helping them feel connected, and then also giving them tools and a roadmap for things that they can try to help themselves get to where they want to go.
And did you read that right after you lost your job, you were fired?
I did. Yep.
Yeah. Did that
Yep.
help you from going down a destructive spiral that sometimes
It
happens
did.
when people get fired like that and they're
Definitely.
not quite sure what
Yep.
to do? Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yep,
good.
it definitely did. Yeah,
Good.
no, it was, and people ask me all the time if you could read one book. I'm like, "That's it."
Yeah.
I mean, I have so many others, so many others. However, I just felt for me, that was a book that, like, really, like, pivotal change and helped me during that transition to really figure out who did I wanna be, and what do I
Mhm.
want my life to look like, and what do I want, and at the time, I didn't even know what I wanted my purpose to be, but I
Yeah.
kind of knew, but not really.
Yeah, that develops over time too, you kinda get
It
that.
does.
Did you feel that sense of Actually, let me ask you, what did you feel when you came to that realization that you found your purpose? Like, you just like it just resonated. It's like, wow, that's my purpose. What'd you feel like on the inside when that happened?
So I think my purpose has changed a little bit over the last few years. I started my business with my purpose being I wanted to improve people's lives. And I wanted to feel like I was doing something that was helping to give back and make people live a better life. And so that core part of my purpose is still the same. But as my brand has expanded and I've
Mm,
written my book and I have my lifestyle platform coming out, it's just gotten a lot bigger and much more defined in terms of, my purpose now and my mission now is to empower women to live all in and give them access to resources to be able to do that.
awesome.
And yeah, and to me, that feels like the right purpose,
Yeah.
because it's big and broad enough that it can touch on all the things I'm passionate about, has enough reach, has an impact. And, that's what I hope my story and, my podcast and my business and all the other things that I do can help women do. Because
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
we need the
I
help.
I yeah, I'm glad you said that your purpose kinda is shifting a little bit. I think that's good for people to hear because some think that, you have to find your ultimate purpose and then pursue that, and that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and it doesn't always happen that way. There's always common
No.
threads, but you can zig and zag to the left or right, and I'm glad you shared that as well. As we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
So one of the things that I really like to talk about from a design perspective and inner wellness perspectives is, and something that I design for clients for all my projects is designing spaces that are I call the do not disturb space within their house. And normally that's a chair that's somewhere. If your space is small, it could be a pillow next to your bed. It doesn't matter where it is or what it is, but it's a space where you go and I tell people start out 10 minutes in your do not disturb space. Sit and sit, meditate, journal, just look out the window if you can't do any of that. Just look out the window, watch life, right? Just sit and just sit. It's okay. Read. If you want to read, just sit and read. And what happens is that as you start to do that over time, your brain starts to realize that every time you go to this space, it's like Pavlov's dog, right? Every time you go to this space, that's your 10 minutes to like let it down and
Mm,
breathe and give your brain a chance to breathe. And so I encourage people go start with 10 minutes, find a space. If you don't have it, create it. And it's not complicated. Pillow, floor, like candle. It's very simple, folks. It could be anywhere. It could be absolutely anywhere. And it's a space where your family also starts to recognize, hey, if mom's sitting in that space, don't talk to her. Don't like there's a do not disturb sign around me. Don't talk to me, right? Don't
yeah.
answer your phone and just do it for 10 minutes. And, I do it all the time. I do it in a chair in my bedroom every day and I do it twice a day. And my body craves just sitting there. And sometimes I just look out the window. Sometimes I don't have the bandwidth for reading or meditating. Sometimes I just look out the window and it gives my brain a chance to breathe because guess what? I'm just focusing on the trees or the squirrels or the birds or the chipmunks or the traffic or whatever. But my brain has a chance to pause and it's an amazing gift if you can figure out how to start to get your brain. You realize you have more control over your brain, and that helps with the negative chatter. That it goes down a whole long mindset thing. But
Oh,
start there. 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
10
Do
min
not disturb zone. Find
do
it.
not
Create it.
disturb zone.
Build it.
I love it.
Mhm.
I love it. I'm already picturing in my mind where mine is and what it's going to be, so I'm so
Very
glad I
cool.
asked you that question. Jeannie, how can people find you and reach out to you?
So I am super active on Instagram. I post every day. So it's at the House of Jermar, House of Jermar, Jermar on Instagram. And my website is jermardesigns.com. So you can find me there. My book is there. My book is 2 Feet In Lessons from an All in Life. It's available anywhere online. The Audible version is available anywhere you get an audiobook. The ebook Kindle is available on Amazon. So I encourage
All over
people,
the place.
buy my book, follow me, buy my book, write a review if that's we need those reviews to help us as
I
small
do.
business owners. So, we need all the help we can get. Write a review and DM and reach out to me. I love to hear people's stories and what
Uh,
resonates and how they can connect with my story as well.
yeah, and if they want you to design their interior space for them, so
By
that
all
too.
means, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
We'll travel. Yes,
Jeannie, thank you
exactly.
for the gift of your time. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Sue. It was so fun to talk to you and congratulations on everything going on in your life. It's exciting.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.